In this tutorial, I'm going to give you an example of building a multiple product e-commerce database design. This database design that we're developing here is focused purely on the product only. So how to actually build that product section of your database so that you can record multiple attributes about multiple products in your database. This is one of many approaches you could use to build this database, and I have detailed 4 more in the Django ORM inheritance optimization tutorial. So by all means, go ahead and have a look at that when you have time, and have a look at some of the other methods you could employ to actually build this database. So key to this design is thinking about what I want this piece of software to do ultimately. Now, of course, for you, this might be completely different, but for me, I'm thinking I'm building this piece of software for some other company to purchase and utilize. So therefore, my design is going to potentially change because of that. And that's an important factor to think about, because here I'm thinking about the end user experience. I want a company, a business, a person to be able to purchase my software and for them to then actually be able to utilize it without having to do any additional programming, for example. So some of the approaches that I've mentioned or I've detailed here in the inheritance optimization video, if you think about what you're really doing there is ultimately you're building potentially more tables or needing there to be more tables developed kind of on the fly, which obviously it can be done through code, obviously, but potentially having either lots of tables with duplicate fields or scaling multiple tables, that doesn't necessarily, to me, feel like a good way of developing this. So the solution that I'm going to present in this tutorial hopefully overcomes some of those problems and potentially is a better way of working when implementing a kind of customer-focused e-commerce database schema. So that's the general thought process of the design that I'm going to show you. So I will be just downloading the previous code in the previous tutorial and getting started working on that. And the first 4 stages here, these are just stages. If you want to go through them, you can. I will be saving the project at that point, and there will be a additional download link for that at that point, and you can just then skip to part 5 where we start talking about the database schema and so on. But if you want to stay for the whole tutorial, we're going to start off just implementing Black and isort, just sorting out our packages and just streamlining our code a little bit more in Visual Studio Code. So again, sorry for the self-advertising here, but I did make another tutorial called Django Extensions for Visual Studio Code Setup. Now here I go through all the extensions that I'm using and I give you a configuration so that you can automatically use the AutoPep 8 to style your code automatically when you press save. So here is just a different method. So using Black and isort is a nice kind of quick, easy solution, alternative solution to utilizing those tools. So we'll quickly run through the requirements text because there's loads of weird stuff in there that I have no idea how it got in there. So we'll just quickly tidy that up and then install the Django-debug-toolbar. Again, I've already given you a previous tutorial. So that was the Django-debug-toolbar, and that just gives you a little bit more detail about it. I'm just going to quickly run through and install it in this tutorial. We'll then quickly run through how to modularize your settings file so that we can have a dev and a production settings file. And that way we can then run the Django-debug-toolbar. We can set it up on a separate file and then run it as like a development setting. And then when we want to go into production, we'll just switch over to the production settings. So like I said, at this point, I will save up and you'll have a fresh link to start the tutorial if you want to from this point. So then we move into the main event, developing the database schema. So I'll take you through step by step and the rationale as to why I think it's a good design. We will then implement this new database schema into our application, and that does include utilizing MPTT for categories. So in addition to that, we'll also add in the code for internationalization so that later on we can come back and just sort out the multiple languages that we might want to use, for example, in our admin interface. So the final step will be then to integrate that new table into our existing template so that it all works as per normal. So this should be the final setup, bar a few little tweaks and changes as we go along. Once we start looking at ordering again and payment, that kind of workflow, things might change slightly here. And of course, we're going to implement all of those different features that we've mentioned in the community messages. So once we start adding those, obviously more tables will appear in probably different tables rather than these main tables here as we start developing through those different features. So here it is. This is a preview of the tables that we're going to build for our product. So you can see here that we're avoiding having to create multiple tables for multiple products and also having duplicated fields in multiple tables. So here you can see we've got the products table, and essentially what we're going to do is we're going to create a table called product type. For example, a product type might be a book, and then we're going to set the product specification, so being ISBN number, page amount of pages, the author, for example, so those kind of specific information about those products. So once we've got those two parameters, we can then build a table, and then we can put that data in this table and connect it to a product. So therefore we have a product with generalized information. So all products will be in this products table with all this general information you would expect to be attached to all products. And then the product specification values, so the individual specific values about that product will be inside of this product specification value table. On the right hand side, you can see that we're going to have a category table still, and also we're going to expand the images here and have a product image table so that we can have multiple images for each product. So go ahead and just access the code if you haven't already and download part 4 template refactoring. So you'll find the link in the YouTube video in the description, or else if you're just in the GitHub Very Academy area, you can just search for e-commerce part 4 and you should be able to then access this and go ahead and download. So just before we start, I'll just say that I'm not going to be utilizing the requirements text here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new virtual environment, but I'm going to sort out the requirements text before I install everything. So just bear with me a second. So go ahead and create a virtual environment. And of course, just then go ahead and access the virtual environment so that you then move into the virtual environment and we're working from there. So go ahead and just open up a file. Let's just open up this file here. You'll notice that it says activating, and down here we now have, it now dictates, or it now tells us we're using Python and so on. So just click on that, click on your virtual environment scripts, and now you'll notice that a new folder appears here called vscode or .vscode. So what we want to do is install Black and isort, and then basically set this up so it automatically applies some settings, or automatically runs, these packages, so that our Python code is styled automatically or formatted automatically for us. So Black is basically going to sort out the styling of Python, trying to follow PEP 8, and then isort's going to sort out the imports at the top of our page. So just go ahead first and create a new folder called _documentation. So this is going to be a folder where you're going to find files with small snippets of code, maybe some instructions or commands that's just going to help you understand the project. So this first file is called package, and I'm just going to provide some information about these packages so you know that why we're actually utilizing these packages for anyone who's not too familiar. Of course, we're going to have the requirements files, but it'd be good to know the core packages that we're using or why we're using them. So I may just pad that out. I'll use Markdown eventually just to create a nice file here so you have some additional information. But I think these are the core applications that we're using on this program. And if you go into the requirements here, you can see that there is loads of stuff here, and some are just dependent upon other packages. So if we installed a package here, it might mean that it needs to install another package, for example. So you can see that we've got Django core headers and Django REST framework, etc. And countries, we're not using that anymore. So there's just loads of stuff here, and we're not going to be utilizing Flake 9. But the problem is here potentially is that If I uninstall some of these, it's just going to take too long. It's just quicker just to install them again. So I'm going to get rid of my requirements text. So I'm just going to go ahead and install all of these. I'm not going to record this. So just go ahead and install all these packages again. And that will then help us rebuild the requirements file. Just to note that the MPTT package is Django-MPTT. So I've just added that. Okay, so just to tidy some things up, you can see that when I run the server, it does tell me that there's a few things missing. So the Django country, so we're not using that. So go over into your core and settings and just have a look here to make sure that we're not using it. So we're not bringing it in, but I think it's in our, if we go to the store and then the models, it does tell us here. We've tried to use country here, so let's see if we can find it. So, oh, sorry, in the accounts, models, country fields. Okay, so let's just we'll get rid of that, and then we'll just get rid of it potentially in there. Country field. Okay, so just remove that. I think that should be okay. So we also need to install 6. So that's just another thing that we need to add. So eventually it will say dependency on app with no migrations. So now obviously we need to go ahead and migrate, which we're not going to do at this point. So let's just stop that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move a file around. So stripe text is going to go into my documentation. So that was in the stripe text, that just gave you the numbers that you need to actually run on the credit card. So I'll tidy that up soon and mark down, give it a title, etc. So that was that. Yep. Okay. We don't need the setup config anymore. So let's just get rid of that. And that just tidies things up nicely. So let's just get rid of this database. We don't need that at the moment. And we'll get rid of the coverage file. We're not going to need that in a minute. So there we go. That's a little bit more tidier. Anyway, back to sorting out the styling, automatic styling. So now we've got this folder here. Remember that we went into a Python file. We clicked here and we selected our virtual environment. So we're just selecting the Python that we're using in the virtual environment. And then this new folder .vscode appears. So here we can apply settings that we want to run in our virtual studio code environment. So what we want to do is we want to automatically run black and the isort. And what that's going to do is just going to tidy up our code. And there's a really good example here in orders, in the URLs, or no, in the account, sorry, URLs. This is looking pretty untidy, this piece of code here. So we're going to use it in a second on that, and you'll see how that nicely then formats it, or at least formats it. Whether it's nice or not, it's up to you. Okay, so I'm going to drag this into the documentation. So this is the setting to use, or the setting I'm using. So I've just added this in the documentation here. This is going to be called settings, so JSON. So I'm just going to rename that to vscode settings. So you'll find this in the repository if you want to just use this. So it's just going to be a text file. Yeah. Okay, so what you can now do is you can then move that across to the actual VS Code folder settings and then go ahead and apply that in. So just be careful of that. It should be the same. If you're using a virtual machine or virtual environment like I am, it should be exactly the same. So let's just quickly run through what's happening here. So we've installed Black, which is going to be doing the PEP Python styling, automatic styling for us, and we've installed isort, which essentially just sorts out the imports at the top of our Python files. So first of all, we've turned formatting on when we save. So we're going to format when we save true. We've then determined where our version of Python is, and then we go ahead now and run the isort. So here we're just using profile black. So there's a new version of isort. There's a few different commands that are available now, but here you can see I've just defined profile equals black, and that's basically just going to utilize the black profile. Let's just summarize it like that. So there's nothing else we need to do there at this point. There are hundreds of options here potentially that you might want to change. So if that's something you're interested in, then have a look on the isort website for other parameters that you could use here. So next up, we've then set the formatting provider, which is black. That's the module, or sorry, that's the package that we installed. And then here I've just added a parameter here, line length 119. So I'm using 119 the same as Django. I've just defined the line length. That's pretty much it, really. So if you're running the Django extension, I've also added that mandatory there. So just a quick review then. If I go into here, you can see that I'm running Beautify, Django, and Python. So, and the SQLite. That's pretty much it. Now there's a tutorial on that, like I mentioned earlier. So you can go ahead and have a look at how that works and the setup for that. But that's pretty much it here. So let's go ahead and save that. Close that. So now let's just go back into that file that I showed you earlier, and that was in accounts and URLs. So let's go ahead now and just run it. So all you need to do is press save. So if I press save here, you can see that it's been automatically formatted. So isort has configured this top section here. You can see there's a gap here now between the imports from Django and the localized imports. So that's just part of the PEP convention of defining or styling the imports. And you can see down here now, this has all been styled in a different way. And it's probably easier now to read than it was. So basically, anytime you press save in any of your files, it's just going to automatically run those two pieces of, or those two packages, and it's then going to style your code nicely. And of course, just to finish off, let's do a pip freeze. Oh, a pip freeze. And that's going to be requirements. Okay, so we now have a new requirements file. That's completely updated now with everything that we need. There shouldn't be any other packages there that we're not using, and we're good to move forward. Right, so that's 1 and 2 sorted now. So we've installed Black and isort. We sorted out the requirements. So let's just go ahead and install Django-debug-toolbar. So I'm just going to quickly run through this and the commands that you need to place into your project, or you can use in your project. Now we won't get this started straight away until we start actually migrating the databases. This is just something we'll come back to later, but we're just going to get this done now. So then next up is the Django-debug-toolbar. A quick install and setup. So the Django-debug-toolbar is a diagnostic tool almost. It's going to provide us some information about our project. So we're going to have a toolbar when we go to any of our templates in our Django application, and then we can have a look at what's going on in the background. So one thing that we're going to be looking at is the SQL code, or the SQL queries, how many queries are running, how fast it is, and so on. And that's going to help us diagnose where we can make improvements. So first of all, let's go ahead and pip install Django-debug-toolbar. So we are going to need to go to the core and just add it into our settings. But we're not going to do that just yet, because we're going to modularize our settings. So we're going to create a new folder called settings, and then create a dev and production setting file so that we can switch between when we want to within our project. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, in our development settings, actually apply or add all of the Django toolbar, debug toolbar settings into that. And that way we're going to move them away from the default settings file. So we'll see that in action now. So let's go ahead and just close settings. In our core here, we're going to create a new folder called settings. Yep. And then inside of here, we're going to need a new file in it, .py. So just to kind of initialize the folder so Django can actually see the folder. And then I'm just going to put this settings file into there. Now, if I were to try and run my project now, we would have a problem. You can see that it's basically telling me that it can't find the settings file anymore. So what we need to do is this initially. So I'm going to call this settings file, not settings anymore. I'm just going to call this, I'm going to call this core. So these are going to be my core settings that I want to use both potentially in development and in production. Now I might want to take some of these settings and actually make other files as well. So it's completely up to you. This is just a basic setup to begin with to get the general idea. So I'm going to create a core, and I'm going to create a new file here called dev-debug. So that's going to be our development debug settings. And yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to do at the moment. We don't need a production file at the minute. So we're basically going to run this file. So how these files run, how Django finds our config file, if we were to go into our project and go to manage Py here, you can see here that we actually call it right here. So on line 9, we've got OS. Bear with me, I'm having a problem here. Oh my God, I can't see the edge. Oh, there we go. So you can see here that on line 9, we're actually importing in our settings. So it's not called that. So obviously we're still in the core. We need to go into a folder called settings and then access a file called core. So that's where we're going to find that. So that's the first thing that you need to do. So you can see that we now have a different problem. So what we also now need to do is go into our core, because one of these settings here at the top, in settings and then core. So one of the settings at the top here, we're looking for the base directory. And what we've done is we've added this core file into another folder structure. Oh, sorry, we've moved it down the hierarchical structure here of this folders. So we're inside of a new folder now. So what we need to do is add another parent here to say to go out of this folder, go out of that folder, and then go out, and then you'll be in the base directory. Essentially, that's what's happening there. So now when I run this, it should now give me that error I had before about migrations. There we go. So we've got the migrations error now, which is absolutely fine. Right, so now that's set up, what I can now do is extend from here, potentially into the debug, the dev debug file. So now I'm actually going to go ahead and set up the Django debug toolbar. So there's a few settings that we're going to need. I'm just going to copy them in here so you can have a little look. So basically I'm going to import, so from .base. So I'm just going to import everything in from the base. Obviously not called base on mine. That's another common name. I'm going to call mine core. I could call it base. Maybe that's a better name. Let's call it base. There we go. So let's just go into the, oh, it doesn't matter actually at this point. So we've called it base. Why not? So from base, we're going to import everything, and then we're going to apply some new settings here. So if you remember in the base now, the debug is true. So that means we're in development mode. So here in the dev debug, I've created an if statement. So if debug, so if we're in debug mode, so if true, debug equals true, then basically what we're going to do is add the internal IPs. So this is a Django debug toolbar setting. So this defines who can access, or what IPs can access this tool. And then we need to add some middleware. So we do the plus equal and then the middleware that we need to include. And then we add it to the installed apps. So we add it to the installed apps. And then you can now see I've selected all the toolbar panels that I want to use. So this is all the toolbar panels that you're going to see inside of this tool once we start utilizing it. And there we go. So what I need to do now is just go over to my manage. Let's just copy that. I need to go over to my manage file again, and now I want to define the dev debug file. So if all goes well, it should now tell me again about this migration problem, which is all good. So yeah, we're all good to go. So we may as well just do a migrate, right? I think we can. Let's just go ahead and actually test this out, right? So everything is working okay. So let's just double check in our browser. Yeah, we're going to have issues. DJ. Oh, DJDT is not a registered namespace. Okay, so what's the problem here? Okay, this is our panel problem. Okay. So the reason for this is I've forgotten to add the last step, which is if we go into our core and URLs, we're going to need to add the URLs for this. So let's go ahead and include those URLs. And as the instruction says, we just need to actually then bring in or import the debug toolbar. So inside of your URLs, let's just add that in. You can see when I press save, it gets placed up the top. So that's the isort in action. So now let's go ahead and go back to our page, refresh, and there we go. So we now have the toolbar available and everything seems to be working. So it looks like our settings or our new setting configuration is okay. If you're just joining us in this second phase here, starting from section 5, then a very warm welcome. So we're going to go ahead now and actually talk about the database schema. So when you go into the documentation, you're going to find a new file here called database schema.txt. And basically that will allow you to go to this website service here, dbdiagram.io, and you'll be able to copy and paste this code in. So we may as well just go ahead and do it. So at least you then have a copy of all the tables for this database. So you can see that it saves mine because it remembers my session. So I have everything here, but all you need to do is copy and paste everything in, and it should look, well, like that. So in some respects, I've already given you most of the information in the preview. This is our new setup or new schema for our tables that we're going to utilize for managing our products in our e-commerce store. So the rationale here is, like I said before, I wanted to build a database where I didn't have to duplicate fields and I didn't have to make or have Django create new tables every time I wanted to store more information about a product. Now, there were a number of different ways to go here. I've decided this route. I think this is a good solution, or is a solution to this problem. Is it the best solution? Well, in some respects, that probably depends on your scenario, what it is you want to and how you want to work with your e-commerce store. So please don't think this is the answer and the only answer, and this is the best way. This is just one solution that potentially would work. So here you can see that we have the product table and we have all the main attributes about a product. So all the products will be stored in here. And what this allows me to do is that I can go over just one, or I can query just one table and get all the main information about a product or all the products. So that potentially has an advantage in that I don't have to stream through all the different specifications about products if I added that all into a tables here, and that would just kind of bloat my table slightly. So here I've got all that important critical information about the product in one table. So this table product is connected to the product type. So we have a one-to-many. So for each product type, there is many products. So the product type, as I explained before, this would be just a name. So book, car, keyboard, monitor, cup, mouse. I'm just looking at things around my room. Anything you want to sell, basically, these are going to be product types. So we are going to start off by, in our database, building product types. And then once we build a product type, we then add the specifications for that particular product type. So here we have a new table where we're going to store all those product specifications. I gave you an example earlier of a product, maybe a book, a keyboard, computer, whatever it is you want to sell. So the idea here is that you build your product types and you can add easily to them. And then you build the individual specifications about those product types. So here you would have, for example, a book, and then in these product specifications, you then potentially would have page numbers. You would have author, ISBN number, and so on. So by doing that, that also opens up the idea of maybe removing the product type table and just allowing you to add in specifications and then just tying those specifications to the product and completely avoiding utilizing product type. So that might be a different approach you might want to apply here in actual fact. So I'm going to run with this setup, defining the product type, and they're going to be connected to some concrete fields about those product specifications. So once we've created our product type with the specifications, we can now go ahead and build a product. So we build a product, we attach it to a product type, and then we know that that product type has certain specifications. So what's going to be shown is those potentially those product specifications. Well, that's how we can set it up. So what we can now do in our product page is fill in all these details here and then go ahead and select product type book, and then it will show us all the product specifications for a book. We can then fill those in. That will then be saved into our product specification values. So that those details connecting up our product specifications and our product. And then that way, anytime I want to show an individual product, say, and I want to also show the specifications, I can just hook into the product specification values and draw those out. So potentially the approach here is that when I show, like I said earlier, when I go to the home page and select all, I only need to select from this table. It's only potentially when I need to go to the individual items that I would want to show the specification values. Of course, other times where I want to show them is when I want to start filtering the product by particular specification value. So potentially that is beneficial to have all the product specification values in one table, because I can individually query those tables, that table, for those individual specifications very easily. So you can see on the right hand side, we've just got the product image to allow us to have multiple images. So I've got a one-to-many connection here. We've got a foreign key here in the product image of product. So we're going to store the product ID there, and then we get potentially then have multiple images for an individual product. So we will go ahead and implement that like everything here within our templates. So finally, we're going to create a category table. So this is a standard category table. So as I said in the preview, I was contemplating building our own category table and then having parent and child categories and so on. But to be honest with you, it's just much easier just to use MPTT. That will allow us scope, particularly with e-commerce stores where you're going to probably have quite a large range of products, and potentially you'll want to use, you'll go into a lot of you'll have lots of subcategories, for example, so you have quite a big depth there of categories. So MPTT really helps us out there and performs much more effectively potentially than us actually just designing and building it ourselves. So by all means go ahead, and I'm not really going to focus on this too much other than to tell you it's a modified pre-order tree traversal technique for storing hierarchical data in a database. So like it says here, the aim is to make retrieval and operations very efficient when you have some really kind of big hierarchical data. So when you've got multiple layers of categories, in this case, this is going to help you retrieve that information very quickly, or at least it's going to perform much more effectively than if we were just going to build it ourselves potentially. So for me, this is just a kind of a go-to package when I need to store any hierarchical data. And that might be categories, that might be comments, anything that's kind of hierarchical, I might utilize this. So at this point, you've got everything you need. So you could just go ahead into the repository and just copy and paste it out into your store model if you want to. So I am going to take you now line by line, going over building the database. So this is where we finished previously our tables. So we did have a product manager which would filter the is active. So any product that was active, it just gets filtered automatically anytime we query the product database. So I'm just going to remove that. We're just going to ignore that for now. So that was just there for you to understand model managers. So we don't need, in actual fact, any of this. So you can go ahead and safely remove everything here. We'll just add this back in. So we're going to need settings, or we're not actually going to need settings anymore. Model and reverse. Okay, so we're going to need those two tools. If you did miss a step earlier, we did install the MPTT package. So if you go into documentation, the package is Django MPTT. So that's what we installed earlier. So go ahead and install that first, and then go into your core, and then in this case the base, and then just make sure that MPTT is there also. So I just need to add it to mine, in actual fact. Okay. Right, so let's start off with categories. We are going to need some tools from MPTT, so I'll paste this in. So you can see that we're going to be utilizing MPTT model and tree foreign key. So these are just tools. Again, like I said, I'm not going to go over any massive explanations here. Like I said, this is a tool that helps us structure and helps the performance of retrieving nested or big structures, hierarchical structures in our table. So let's just add that in, and now let's go ahead and build some tables. So we're also going to prepare our tables for translation. So we're going to have a setup so that you can add other languages. And for example, in the admin area, in this case, you'll be able to see different languages if you wish to kind of implement that. So it's up to you, and it's easy to remove. Just don't include the translation tools here, the get text lazy. So I do have a tutorial. There's 2 tutorials at the moment on this. So go ahead and have a look at those if you've not seen those. And that gives you a little bit more information about how to apply internationalization within your application. Okay, so let's get started. Like I said, it's all pre-coded. I'm just going to run through that other code. It's much easier for you just to copy and paste this in, but have an idea of what it is by just running through this. So first of all, we need category. So notice here that we're bringing in MPTT model. We're not utilizing the model.models at the moment. So we're going to bring that in, and that kind of connects us up to MPTT. So then we can go ahead and build a MPTT model. So I'm going to be adding kind of a text string here at the start of each class or each model or each table, however you want to describe this. And that's going to expand as we add more methods, etc. later on inside of this, so we know what's going on. Just give you some additional information. Right, so you can follow the schema here. There's no surprises here. So we can just follow the schema, but the format I'm using here is going to be slightly different. So where I want to translate something, just to keep it nice and brief, you can see I'm using this underscore to represent the fact I want to use getTextLazy, which is a translation, a kind of default translation tool we have here in Django. So you can see here flagged essentially here that category name. So I've flagged this verbose name for name, sorry. Here is going to be called category name, and that's then going to allow me later on when we sort out internationalization to make a translation for that. So when I select other languages, it will then appear in that language. So here, if you see this is the name of the table. Now by default, the name of the table, if we looked in admin, will be name. So what I've done here is I've used a verbose name, and I've created it so that we can use language translation. And I'm going to call this category name inside of my admin, for example. So that's what you're going to see. You're not going to see name, you're going to see category name, and then that can be translatable. Now, in addition to that, we can also add help text. So here again, it's translatable. I've just added some things here which you might want to change, but the help desk text by default is going to be underneath the input form in the admin area. So under each input, we can add the help text. Sorry. So that's where you're going to see that, and that's translatable. So we've got a max length of 255, unique equals true. So I want to say that each category has to be unique, and I'm just enforcing that with unique equals true. Right, so then we've got the slug as per normal. Notice that we've got the verbose name there, max length, unique, true. Then we've got the parent. Okay, so here we're essentially creating a parent field, defining what category is connected to what other category by utilizing this parent field here. So if I make two categories, I can flag one as parent, so that if I had Django and another category called models, and that was part of a Django's category, then I could create kind of a parent being Django, and so on. So that allows me to kind of connect that up. So that code really is just from MPTT documentation. So related name, it says children. Wonderful. On delete, it's going to delete. So anytime I delete the root node, say Django, and if there's any subcategories, those are going to be deleted too. Right, and I've also applied this is active because potentially I want to deactivate a category. So I've put is active, and I can deactivate a whole category if I wanted to, for example. Okay, so at the end here, we've got this mandatory kind of class MPTT meta, order insertion by name, and then have a look at the documentation for that. So then we've got the class meta. So in each table, I've enforced the verbose name and the verbose name plural. So those are just the, that's the name that's going to appear in the admin area. And then for the table, and then also the plural version of it. And you can see they're both set for internationalization, so I can translate them. And the story is going to be very much the same as we go along here. So I've got the get absolute URL in place as we did before, so no changes there. And then I've gone ahead and using the return the name. There we go. So that's that table now completed. Right, so then I go over to the products table. Oh, sorry, the product type. So remember, this is the product type table that provides you a list of different types of products that's for sale. So all we've got here is the name. This will get formatted differently. I apologize for this. So verbose name, product name, help text. You're going to see, just working through this, is all pretty much the same stuff as we go along. So is active, and then we've got the class meta. So again, verbose name plural, and then we move on. Okay. So apologies if you are doing this line by line, you want to write this out. Feel free to do that, of course. And I'm trying to allow you to kind of stop. I show you all the code so you can kind of pause and do it and so on. But I didn't want to do this line by line and type it out because it's quite a few lines here. It could take an hour. The pace I go. So class product specification. So now we've got the specifications for each of the product types. So here we're going to have a foreign key. So here we've got product type, foreign key to the product type. Now remember, Django is going to put an ID after this. So in the table, it's actually going to be product type underscore ID. You can see here we've got product type on delete. And here I've used the new 3.1 option, Django 3.1 option of the restrict. So this is just going to prevent it from being deleted if, for example, we delete one of the product types. So just for now, for a little bit of security, I don't want people going around deleting my product types and then deleting all the specifications. So I'm just enforcing the fact that you can't really delete product types because I've enforced the product type foreign key to be restricted. So there has to be a foreign key. There has to be a product type that's being connected from the product specification. So I'm using restrict. There we go. So like I said, that's a new 3.1 feature. So now we've got the class meta as per normal, the verbose and the plural name. And you can see it's slightly different. So here the class is called product specification. So I don't want that name. I want like a space in between. So that allows me to kind of enforce that using the verbose name there. And then we've got the return, and then we move on to the product table. Okay, so it contains all the product items. So here we've got another restrict. So at the moment, I'm just enforcing what happens if you were to delete the parent item of a foreign key. I did in previous tutorial, and it's mentioned a few times, incorrectly state the deletion order. I do apologize for that. So hopefully I've said it right this time. So we've got a category as well. So I'm just restricting that so we can't delete anything there because I don't want my products to disappear. because I've deleted the category, for example, at this point. So I'm enforcing it essentially that I won't be able to delete the category once I've built it. So I've got the title. So you can start to see now the pattern, the verbose name, the help text. So I've got the verbose name for that title, and then I've got the description, same type of format here, blank equals true. So I try to explicitly define wherever I can, or just show you, try to explicitly define as much as possible within my model. So we've then got the slug as per normal, and then that needs a name. And then we've got the regular price. So verbose name, help text, max digits and decimals. So that gives you some information there. And then this time I've added an error message name. So we can also add and then of course translate different error messages. Now I think Django by default will provide, or will give you the option to translate generic error messages. So you can create your custom error messages here and have them translated if that's what you want to do. And we can do the same thing for the discount price. There we go. So just to give you an idea here what's going on. So we've got the regular price. Now this is an area which might change over time because I haven't quite planned this out yet. So in terms of actually calculating price, if for example, so we've got the regular price. Now, if you see most shops online, they tend to always have sales. So they always tell you the regular price and then the new discount price, but the discount price is just the price all the time because they're constantly having a sale. So it's just trying to promote sales essentially. So having this type of option here allows me to use the regular price if I want to. And then when I have a sale, I can then define all the discount prices and then go ahead and just use the discount price. Or potentially there's room for different things I can set up there by having the discount price and the regular price inside of my table. Right, so then we've got is active, so we can check to see if the product's active and hide it if it's not active or yet available for purchase, and then created at and then updated at, and then we move on to the meta. So ordering, verbose name plural, and then we get the get absolute URL. So that's just from the initial setup of our model, and then also then the string title. So then we move on to product specification values. So of course, the product table is connected, to the product specification values. So here, all we need to store is the product foreign key. So the product ID that we're storing information about. We want the specification. So that specification are individual specifications. So that's going to be a foreign key to a product specification. So that might be if it's a book, ISBN number, author, amount of pages, and so on. So that connects to one of those items in the product specification table. And then we just need to add our value. So this is going to be a generic character, like a varchar field really, in that we're going to be able to type in there strings or just numbers, for example. So it's not going to be any other format. We can maybe change the formats as and when we potentially need them, but we're probably not going to make any calculations, or there's probably no need for us to worry about the data types in the values, for example. Or potentially all we're going to be utilizing this for is showing the customer specifications and then potentially running search matches on that data. So let's move down to the meta and then the return string. And then last of all, then we have the product image table. So here we have the foreign key then to the product, so we know what image is connected to what product. And then we have the actual image that we're saving. Remember here, we're not actually saving the image in the database here. We're saving the link to the image because we're going to upload it to images slash. So just to define that, then we got the alt text that we're going to try and enforce. So we could just turn that off actually. So we're going to enforce the alt text. So you need to write an alternative. And then we can keep that on. Either way, is feature. So what we're going to do, for example, we have a product and there might be 10 images, but we need to define one that's actually the feature image that we're going to use predominantly on the home page or the category page or the main image that shows up first, right, for the product. So we've got is feature for that, and that's just going to be a Boolean. Now it's probably worth noting at this point, you might see some people using a tiny int rather than a Boolean field, and there's no real they're using the same amount of memory for a Boolean field or a tiny int, I believe, top of my head. So that just might be the case. So it's just a case of whether you want to store it as a true or false, or essentially it's the same 1 or 0. Now, what you can also do here, if you store this as a tiny int, potentially then you've got some ordering capabilities, because a tiny int we could use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you wanted to order the images in a particular way, we could potentially use this field to do that, to add some sort of ordering. That'd be interesting. Okay, so then we've got created at, and then updated at, and then just the verbose name and the plural name. And I think that's all. Yep. So before we go ahead and start migrating and testing the migrations and so on, let's just go into the admin. Let's just remove everything here, or just comment that out, because that's potentially going to cause problems when we go ahead and migrate the data, because a lot of these fields, for example, might not even exist anymore. So do that. And then, of course, what you might also have are migrations from a previous migration. Now, like I said before, we can automatically do this, but for now, I'm doing it this way. Just to become familiar with this, if you've not done this before. So you'll need to go into the accounts. You'll need to go anywhere where you're having or storing data, so the migration here. And we need to remove these migrations. And again, I appreciate that this isn't a Django way. But at this point, until we get to that point, I'll make a whole tutorial on it. This is how we're going to do it. So store migrations, right? So don't forget that we shouldn't remove the initialization file, the init file. That's a big no-no. So that's going to be needed. And then I'll just remove this database. Cool. And right, I think we're now ready to kind of test this out. So let's just go ahead and do a py make migrations. This time we're going to run a -- check. So it looks like everything's going to be okay. So we didn't actually apply a migration there or set up one. We're just checking to make sure everything's okay. And you can see that everything is going to be nicely created in the order they're going to be created in. So let's just go ahead now and migrate. Migrate. Yep. And there we go. Okay, so it looks like it's okay. Now, if I do start this up, there's going to be loads of problems. And let's go into the homepage. Just load this up. Where that over there? Oh, there it is. So there's my homepage, and here we go. So now we've got problems that we need to sort out. Okay, right. So that's building the database. We've sorted that out. Everything seems to be working okay. So our last step now is just to go into the stored templates and just sort out all the new changes that we've made. So there's a few steps we need to cover here. I'll try and go as slow as possible because this is obviously the important bit. If you're following this step by step, to make sure that you've complete all these steps. Right, so this is a fun bit. Let's have a look. So down here you can see the traceback. It leads us to the views, store views, line 7. Right, so this problem here is because we're not utilizing the custom object manager anymore. So if we go into now our store and views and line 7, we just need to change that back to objects. All. There we go. So that's our first thing that we've sorted. Now it continues. So that's all good. It looks like our page is running. We don't actually have any products yet in our store. So the next thing, I guess, is for us to now sort out the admin area. So we're just going to go through a basic setup here. Of course, there's 100 things we could do here as well at this point, but I just want to get a functional working site up so I can start to add data and then test my data in my store. And then later on, we can come back and make it into a more rounded package for our customer as if they were going to actually use it. So let's just get rid of everything here. So here in the admin, we're going to start utilizing, if you haven't used them before, inlines. So what this is, if I'm just trying to break this down a little bit for you, to summarize what's happening here. For example, if I wanted to, let's just go back to basics, right? So in the admin area, we register these models. So let's pretend, and I'm assuming you've done this before, you go into the admin area, you register the product table, you go into the admin, you can see the product table, and then you can add some things. Right, so using inlines, essentially what we're doing here is it allows us to take, for example, two connected tables, and it allows us to enter data in both those models at the same time. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a product type area, and we're going to inline the product specification so that when we build the product type with the name, we can also specify the product specifications at the same time. And then we're going to build a second inline so that when we build a product, we will also then be able to specify the specifications at the same time. Now, because the product is already connected to the product table and the product specifications are already connected via foreign key to the product specifications, when we go to the product table, although we've created an inline to the product specification table, we will also have drop downs for product type and product specifications. So there's no need for us to kind of connect product specifications to product specification here, the value table to the specification table here, and there's no need for us to do anything for product and product type. So for me, this is the real value. This is the real benefit and advantage of using Django. I have all these tables here, and just for a few commands, I can connect everything together and actually have a valid form set. So back in our admin file in the store, let's go ahead and build this out. So we're going to import forms from Django. Let me just close this. And then we're going to also, as per normal, Django contrib, import the admin, and then also the MPTT admin, MPTT model admin, because again, we're utilizing, or we're trying to, we're using MPTT, don't forget, in the categories. So we just need to use the MPTT model admin for us to actually enter data into our category table. Right, so first of all then, from models, we're just bringing our models. So there's two ways we can do this. We could do for example, from dot import models, just import everything because we're pretty much using all of them, or we can just add them in, right? So we've added all the products that we're going to, or all of our models that we're going to be utilizing. So next up, we're then going to register. And this is just a default kind of admin site register category, the table, and the fact it's an MPTT model. So we're going to bring in MPTT model admin. So that's as simple as it gets there for registering the category utilizing MPTT. Right, so next up, we're going to create a new class called product specification inline. So this is our first inline that we're going to be utilizing here when we add in our product type. So both of these tables are going to be added at the same time. So we're going to create a page with two forms, one for product type, one for product specification. So this is our inline that we're utilizing. So all we need to do is define the model and move on. Okay, so next up, we're going to register the product type. So that's the product type. That's the actual table product type. And now what we need to do is now define the inline. So we've registered the product type table. Now we're going to say what other forms, or sorry, what other tables we want to also input here. We've already set up our product specification inline. So here we're using the tabular inline. So there's two methods here. It's worth having a little look if you want to know that. And then we just define the product specification inline. There we go. So that's as easy as it gets, really. And then we just need to do the same thing again. So this is the product image inline. So let's not forget, we also need to, in the products table, add the images to the products. So we're going to create this as an inline. And then we need to create the product specification inline. So here we've created the product image table as an inline and the product specification value table as an inline. So now all we need to do is then just bring those in. So we registered the product table and then bring in the inlines that we need that we've just set up. And that's the product specification and the image inline. So with that done, we should now be able to just quit this server. Now we have just migrated, so we're going to need to create a super user. So if you're new to the project, we're using email addresses as the usernames, and then usernames is going to be admin, password is going to be admin in my case. Right, and let's just restart the server. So let's just go back into our admin area. We'll go into the admin area either. Now, because we're using this Django tool here, the debug tool, it's giving us what looks like a problem here. So we can just ignore that and click on that for now. We can disable it if we want to, of course, because we can just switch over to the other settings file that we created. So a.com. So it's going to come up again and then admin. There we go. So here we are. So now we have products, product types, and categories. So let's just add a category for now. Oh, we need to set this up so it automatically fills this in. We can easily do that. And there's no parent at the beginning and we've got it active. So let's just press save. Right, so that's Django category done. So next up then, let's add our product types. So we're going to have a product type of book, and then we're going to now define, you can now see the other table here, the product specifications. So here we're going to have the pages, number of pages, and let's just do the ISBN number, the unique identifier for the book, and let's just press save. Right, so that now has sorted that out. So now I can go into my products and I can now add a product. So I've got product type, book, category, Django, title, let's just call this book 1. And the slug, remember we're using the slug, so we can't have a space. So I'm just going to call this book 1. Regular price, $10.99. Discount price, $8.99. It's not bad. And then product visibility. And now here we have the two inlines. So one is what we've just defined here. We now have pages and ISBN. So we can now define this. Say 120 pages, ISBN number. There we go. You can see we can add more if we want to. Now, what will happen here is that once we add more specifications for different products, by default here, we actually have access to all of them. So if we were to make a new product called phone and then add all the specifications, we would also be able to access them too. Okay, so that's just something we can sort out later, add some custom code so that it only shows us the specifications for that particular type based upon the type. Now here we would probably need to, so because when we press type here, we would need to fire off an action. So we would need to find a way of, or work out a way of firing off that action. So when we select the product type, this changes. So that's something we'd need to do later if we wanted to go that way. Now here we've got the option again, or we have an option now of adding images. So you can go ahead and add some images. So I've added two images here, the blue and the green image, and then I'm just going to flag one as is featured. Now I could break this by adding two that's featured, because I only really want one that's featured. So that's another check that I need to potentially code in to ensure that there's only one item that's featured. So let's go ahead and press save. Everything looks okay. So now we've got some data, we can go ahead and check out all the other problems, of course. Right, so you can see straight away that the data here, well, it looks like we've got the name of the book, but we've changed the name of the values or the the amount of the product. So here we just need to change some things here just to get all this data back, but you can clearly see it's starting to work here. If I click here, it takes me to the individual page, but you can see that in stock, we don't have that anymore. So we're just going to need to change and update some of these pages so that we can start utilizing this. So let's first of all work out how to get an image back, and then all the other kind of data here that we need to use. So we just need to grab our templates again, or go into our templates. So let's go into our templates, and then this is going to all be the store. So we're on the index page. So let's have a look on this index page here. So we've got products. So we've got a problem with the price. So let's just go back to our schema. Our price now is called regular price. So if you want to just copy that in, let's call this regular price. So we can go back to our code, and instead of product price, we're going to have now regular price. Okay, so if I refresh now, you can see that we've got the regular price. So it looks like everything is working. So the image is slightly different. So let's remember what's happening here in our image. What we're doing is we're collecting the product. Now there might be multiple images. So what we're going to need to do is loop through those images and select the active image so that we can show the active, or the main image. So the featured image is featured. So let's just remind ourselves what's happening here. Now you can see that we've got this if statement here. So if not products, we're going to show this, else we're going to loop for all the products. Now I left this here because this is not a particularly good way of doing this, and I wanted to show how potentially this was creating more queries. So hopefully I was going to show you that later, but potentially what we're going to need to do here is remove that if not, because we don't need that. We can just use the empty tag. So just check to see if what we're returning is empty. If it is, then we can just then output this div here. So what we're going to do here then is where the image is, we just need to add some new logic now and just loop through the images in the database. So let's set up some another for loop. So for image, so remember we're looping through. Let's have a look. Where are we? Top here. Oh no. So if not products, so we've got products. So if not products, blah, blah, blah. So product in product. So every time we loop through, we're adding that data into this product key here and outputting then data from this product key. So you can see I've utilized that. So for image, so basically for each image that we find, we're going to put it into image and then output image, or from image, the keyword image here. So product, so we go into product. Remember that's the keyword that's being utilized here. So we'll loop round item number 1. That goes into the product value here, or so let's go as a variable. Now we go into that variable. Now what we want to find about this product is the product image. Now this is the key bit here. So our foreign key has a related name. So in our table, if we just go into our table in the store in our models, at the bottom here, apologies, I'll run around this quick. At the bottom here, we have related name product images. So what we're doing here is we're inside of this data here. Now we're doing a reverse search for our images. So we need to define it by our related name. So our foreign key has a related name product images. So that's how we can get from the product specification, the products table into our products image table, utilizing the related name. So we use related name and then all. So basically what we're doing here is we're just collecting all the data, all the photos, all the images about this particular product that we're currently looping through. So now what we can do is we can check to see, using a simple if statement here, if the image that we've collected, because we're looping through each one, if feature is true. So we just say is feature. So if it is true, we're going to actually print it out. So here we've got our image class, same as normal, but this time we go into the image. So the image here is the actual item. Then we go into that item, and then we want to get the actual image URL. So we say image, and then we need to define the fact it's a URL. So we use .url. So we go into that individual image. Imagine we're in the table now. So we need to look for that field that has the image URL path, and that's in the image field. And then we need to use the URL just to define the fact we're building a URL. So there we go. That will then output the URL. Output the image, sorry. And we're pretty much back to where we were. So let's just get rid of this code here. There we go. So now we have that, and that should remove the text here. Okay, so we're good to go there. So let's now click on this item here. Okay, so next thing is this problem here. So we want to sort out this individual page. So let's just whiz through the trace back here. So it looks like we may have a problem here. because we've got in stock equals true. So in store views on line 18 in the product detail, we're defining in stock equals true. And that isn't true anymore because we're utilizing is active potentially instead. So let's just go back now into our views in our store. So we're looking for store and then views, and then line 8 here, or was it line 8? So the detail view in stock right here. So we can remove that. Or what we could do is if we utilize our schema again, it should be is active. So let's just make this is active. Let's just go back into our page. And there we go. So that resolves that little problem there. So now we need to do the same thing again with the image. Now it's slightly different here because we're not iterating over anything. So we just need to find the image for this particular product, book 1. So let's go back into our templates store. And this is the single template. So this is our single template. We just need to find then the image, which is here on line 40, it looks like. Okay, so that's our image. Let's just put this on one line for now. So that's our image. So what we need to do here is just add in a new loop. Now let's remember what we want to do here, because this is the page where we want to show the main image and then all the other image that's associated to the book. So I'm just going to show you a default kind of framework here. We're just setting up. This isn't obviously the final output because we potentially want to click on these items and it shows us a detailed view of it potentially. So I'm kind of going to leave that up to you for now. If you want to add some sort of JavaScript where there's some sort of light box or it appears in the main section, let's just output it onto the page for now. So removing the existing image element, let's go in. So we're going to create a for loop. So for image, so for the image, if we find an image, for each image that we find, in product. So remember, we're looping through here. Sorry, we're not looping through. So remember, this is a product. So we're returning the data about the product on this single page through product. So we go into the product and then we go into the product image. Now, again, this is a reference point like before to the foreign key related name in the image table. And then we use .all. So we want to find everything. So we don't have .all, this won't work. So we're going to loop through and find all the images associated to this product. Okay, so that's how we're linking to the products table. So now we can set up our if statement here. So if image is feature, we're going to show it. Else, we're going to show something else. So this isn't actually show this or that. This is going to be show the feature image and then also show all the others. But I just want to format the HTML in a way that shows the big image or the main image or the featured image in the big box and then the small or the other images in a smaller box. So we've got the image here. So what we're going to do here is link to it. So this is just going to be image URL. And then the alt text is going to be image alt text. So we're looping through the items as image. Then we need to go into the image field and then look for the URL. And that's what we want to output there. And the same thing again here. We go into the image reference point every time we loop around an image. And then we're looking for in the table, the image field, we're looping through the item. We want to go, well, this is wrong, isn't it? This should just be, alt text, image.alt text. Okay. So once that's done, let's go into do the else. So we've got this image here. So it's going to show these little images here. Now I've created this D block inline, which is going to create smaller blocks. And it's going to have a padding of at the top of 3. So we'll have a look at what that looks like in a second. Okay, so that's what we got. So let's go ahead and actually have a look at this. There we go. So we've got the main image here, and then the smaller ones will appear next to each other. So next up, let's just add in the right amount in the price. So we just need to go back to our template and look for our price. So it's not product price anymore. I've already forgotten. So let's go ahead and have a look. Regular price. So let's go back. There we go. So we've got our price. Now that's pretty much it really on this page. At this point, we just need to now add to the basket. Now just have a look to see if this works. So you can see when I click on add to basket, it's not working. So let's press F12. We're not getting a response. So let's have a look at see what the problem is in our server. So you can see here that in the basket we have price with a string of product.price. So again, we've just got it named incorrectly. So it tells us here in the basket.py line 30, that's where the problem is. So let's go into our basket, and then the basket class that we built previously, line 30, you can see it says product price, but it shouldn't. It should say regular underscore price. Okay, so now we've changed that. Let's go back in and refresh. So now we can add it to our basket as per normal. Cool. Right, so now let's go into the basket. Now you can now see that we've got a problem here too. So let's go down and have a traceback. So basket summary, line 11. Basket. Okay, so in the views, basket view, line 11. So that's potentially a problem here. So type object product has no attribute products. Okay, so this problem here is going to be the fact we're using that custom manager again, products. It doesn't exist anymore. So let's just go into our views and just double check. So here, for example, in the category list, we might as well just change it now. Objects. So let's go into our basket view. So let's just have a look through here. So we are bringing in product from the store. So product, let's search for this. So it was products, wasn't it? I think that was the problem. Okay, so let's go in our basket and have a look for products. So there we go, line 39 here. This is inside the basket. So this should be objects. Dot filter. So that's line 39 in the baskets.py in the basket app here. So let's go back and refresh. There we go. So it looks like it's working now, and we've got the right price going on. So we just need to add or change the image here. So this we can just copy and paste. Let's go into let's close everything down. Let's go into the store index. Let's just copy this from line 29, the image. And then we'll go into now the basket summary. We'll look for the image, where the image is being displayed. Image. So it's here in line 60. So I can get rid of line 60. Oh, I can get rid of line 60. I can. I'm pressing the button. What's going on? My keyboard stopped working. Okay. Okay. So we've got this loop here. Press save. We can do a beautify on that. Okay. So same again. We've just copied that in. So that will just loop around and then find the featured image. So we should now just be able to go back and refresh. And we've got the featured image. So let's just check, make sure this works. When we update, you can see we've got 2 and we've got the right price. Okay, so when we go to checkout, there isn't anything that needs to be changed there, I don't think, at this point, but we're just focusing here on the catalog system. That, when we click on checkout, takes us to the payment app. And also in the accounts here, we've not ordered anything yet. So there we'd probably need to make some changes too, because we use the image here as well. So at the moment, I'm not worried about that because that's all about ordering. We need to focus on that separately for now. The main focus at the moment is on our so next up then is the category we need to sort out. So let's go ahead and do that. But like I said, the main focus at the moment is on the product catalog system. So we'd make all these changes, and in the next step, we'll start thinking about, well, searching for items. And also we need to start now thinking about creating a way of, when we go to the individual page, maybe doing some filtering at some point on the categories, for example, so we can filter by X, Y, and Z. So that's potentially where we're going to go next here. So let's just focus on this category. So this is the category template. So let's go into our new template for categories. So that's going to be in our store and category. So same thing again, I'm going to find that image on line 26 there. I'm just going to paste in that same piece of code and then just beautify that. Okay, so that should be the image done. And now that's the wrong piece of code. So let me just go back and do that. So I've just copied the code from the index for the image. So that should be the image now sorted. Yep, so now I just need to update the other settings here. So this is a regular price. And I think that was it. There we go. Okay, so that seems to work okay. So you will notice straight away, even though we're using MPTT, we still have the same functionality. There was nothing more that we needed to do here to get that working. Now, if we were to start now adding more hierarchical structures here, this could potentially cause a little problem. So let's just take the first step with MPTT and just configure it so that on this page here, it will show me anything. For example, it will show me all the Django books and any sub items in the subcategories in Django. So just to reiterate, so I'm going to make a subcategory called models connected to Django. And then on this page, when I click on Django, I want to show all the Django books as well as all the books in the model Django stroke models books category. So let's just go ahead and do that. So first of all, I think that I need to just go in and create a new category. So what I want to do here is utilize MPTT to kind of show these categories here. So it looks like it's working okay actually at the moment. So let's just go in and add a new category. So like I said, let's just call this model. So this would be like Django models, specific books about Django models. So let's make a safe URL. And the parent's going to be Django. So is active, yep. So we'll save that. Okay. So let's just go ahead and create a new product very quickly. And we'll call this Django model. So we'll call this book 2. Okay, so we now have 2 books. So let's just go back and have a look at default behavior. So when I refresh, you can now see, in actual fact, the models is now appearing in my default list. So I can go ahead and click on it. It shows me the book. Now I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I didn't select a, that's a good point. I didn't select a featured image. So that looks okay, right? So shop Django models, it now shows me all the items from Django models, for example. So I can go back, but when I refresh on Django, you can see that it only shows me the items in Django. And potentially here, I actually also want it to show me all the books in the Django models, for example. So that's potentially what I want to do. And here, for example, I may have, what I probably want to do here now is using JavaScript to have like a side a sub menu. So when I go to Django, I can then go across and go to Django models, etc., etc. So I need to sort all that out, and I don't want to do that now because that's going to take me another hour to show you that. So we've got everything up and running at this point. So let's just show you how to kind of maybe remove the child categories from here, and so that when we click on Django, it shows everything here. So let's just sort that out. So if we move down, let's just close this. So if we go into our store and then the views, this is where we're collecting the data here in this function here. You can see that we're just filtering out the categories and then showing the category and so on. So that's what we previously had. Right, so we can keep the top option here, category, because we're using that as a name on the page. So how we collect this name here, we're just getting the category for this particular item. So that's that piece of code, and what that does is a little bit, you probably don't need that because we could potentially utilize that's a good point, we could just utilize the actual product detail potentially to get that category, but that's what we've got here on line 12. That just shows and outputs the category on the page. So this is where we get the products regarding the category. So notice here we bring in a slug. Now let's just remember here we're using this slug here, this parameter, and we're moving that across to this function here in the category slug. So we then capture that, in this case Django, and then we utilize it to show the category or to select the category and then get all the products based upon that category. So Django goes in category slug, we collect it, get the category, and then we use it to then run on the objects, on the products, to find all the products. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just extend this, and we're just going to now filter so that we get the descendants. So we're going to use a MPTT function here, get descendants, and we're going to include all the descendants. So if we find all the Django books, we'll also get all the descendants, so all the related, or the child books related to the Django category. So let's just, we'll just need to extend this actually. So this is going to be, so category, category in. So we're going to use a category in. So category in equals category dot objects. So category in, so we're going to get the category objects dot get. So basically we're saying category in, so we're potentially find multiple categories, category in. So we're collecting multiple categories. So now we're just going to get the categories that we need. So categories object dot get, and then you probably associate get with getting a single item, right? But here we can utilize it with MPTT to get multiple items. So name, let's just do name equals, and let's just get the category slug. And now what we can do is we can now run the get descendant. So get underscore descendants, and now that's going to now say include, because we want to include self equals true. Yep, so we want to also collect the Django, so because we're getting descendants, and so we're saying, well, actually we want to include self too. So also when we get Django, we want to get the descendants and Django. So get descendants. So there we go. So that's what we're doing. So category in. So we're going to collect all the categories from category objects.get, and then where basically the name equals category slug. So that's going to be Django. And then we're going to also get all the descendants. And there we go. So we should now return back all the items as well as the descendants. So all the items in Django and the descendants. So if I refresh, we can now get that other book, which is obviously not in the Django category. It was in the Django subcategory of Django, so Django models. So the problem here then is that if I now go into Django models, where it doesn't work, so that's not very good. So I also want to remove Django models now from this list. So that's really simple. Let's just remember this is an MPTT list. So we can use the tools now on this to filter this list. So this is from the context processor that we created. So if we go into here in the context processor we created, that's building that list on every single page. So all we need to do here in actual fact is just run a filter. So let's just filter, and then from MPTT we say level equals, well, just 0. So level 0 is the base level or the parent level. That's where Django and any other base category is going to be. So we're just basically filtering out all of the root categories. So we do that, and let's go back in and then refresh. And what we now have is just Django. So there we go. Right, so let's just finish this off, because we did install, and we've not even used it yet, the Django, let's just get up, the Django tool here that we installed earlier. Now, look at what it's showing us. So let's just go back to the home page here. So 6 queries, this is what I'm interested in. Here I'm running 6 queries, and it's telling me here that I've got similar queries. So the question here is, why am I running similar queries? I shouldn't be. I need to start thinking about an optimization for this, for example. So I need to work a way of trying to remove this, so I can reduce the amount of SQL queries, and potentially that will then improve the system. That's my angle at the moment on the tutorials that I've been showing you. So this is a default Django debug toolbar that we set up earlier. If you missed the first couple of stages, we've already gone through that. So just go ahead and install that and have a look at the setup guide at the start of this tutorial. So let's have a look at what's happening here. So what's happening here is that essentially we're collecting, if we go into our model here, we're collecting the products, say all the product IDs, and then we're going into this product image table. We say we've got ID number 1, we've got ID number 2 from product, and we're kind of doing two queries. First query, ID number 1 product ID, query number 2 product ID number 2. So why don't we just take the product IDs 1 and 2 and just say to the product image table, look for where the images look for images where the product equals 1 and 2 at the same time. What's the point of doing 2 queries? So that's what we need to do. So let's go back into our store and our views. So I super generalize there. That's essentially what we're doing here. So this is it here, product objects all. So let's do, in this case, let's do a prefix related. So instead of objects all, let's do prefetch. So I'm using prefetch related because here I'm looking for the foreign key. I'm working backwards to the foreign key. If I was working the other way, I'd use a different tool. So related. Now we need to set up the related. So that's the product image. So this is, remember in the image table, this is the related name. So I'm going to that related name, and now I want to do a filter. So is active, is underscore active equals true. So just add that back on. So I'm running two things here, prefix related and filter active equals true. So the product needs to be active for me to do this. So there we go. So I'm using prefetch related. So if we go into the documentation, prefetch related, as I was kind of explaining, returns a query set that will automatically retrieve a single batch related objects for each of the specified lookups. So essentially what it's saying here, instead of running 2 queries, it's just going to run a batch. So one query querying against 2 of the items, in this case 2 books, and return it. So now we've got that in there. Let's go back into our page and remind ourselves that we were running multiple queries. So 6, so let's just refresh. And now we're running 5 because we're not doing the multiples anymore. And there we go. So we haven't got that problem of running similar queries. So it's a good diagnostic tool to help us start to think about optimizing our page. Okay, so you can see what's happening here. We're collecting information from the session. We're collecting information about the user, our user, because we're logged in. And then we're getting the category information. We're then getting the products, and then we're getting the images. So that's all the queries that we're running here. Well, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully that was useful for you. If you are just here just wanting to find out about how to build that, then thank you very much. If you're following the project from the beginning, then thank you very much. I hope it's going well. Please provide some feedback if you can, if there's something you want to add, or if there's just something that I'm not doing that you need. Maybe I'm going too quickly or too slowly. Maybe you prefer for me to type everything in, which I'm not going to do. I apologize. So yeah, some general feedback is always good. So if you have any problems, I'll try and help and support you as best as I can. From here, try and be very specific as possible when you ask for help. Not just, it doesn't work. That doesn't help me out. Unfortunately, I can't help you with that. And then hopefully I'll see you in the next tutorial.